Every Terraria player remembers their very first world, chopping down that first tree and going into the caves for ores to upgrade their gear, and eventually taking on the multiple bosses in Terraria. And today I'm bringing that entire journey to LEGO by building every pre-hard mode boss from Terraria. There are a total of 8 pre-hard mode bosses in Terraria, and I'm building every single one before ranking each model out of 10. And first up is King Slime. King Slime is exactly what his name suggests, a giant blue slime wearing a golden crown with gemstones in it. He is an easy boss to defeat, as all you need is a long platform, a cloud in a bottle, and a ranged weapon to attack it with. I begin by building a central core using snot bricks, leaving a space inside for the hidden ninja. From there I create the slime's chunky shape using blue plates to capture its iconic blob-like silhouette. I do this 4 times and add each panel to the central core. I then add a simple top to the slime where the crown will be. Finally I add the crown using yellow plates and studs to represent colourful gems. For such a simple design, I'm really happy with how this one turned out, looking so much like the boss. I give this King Slime mock an 8 out of 10. The Eye of Cthulhu is probably Terraria's most iconic boss. It's a massive floating eyeball with nerves trailing behind it as it relentlessly charges towards the player. This boss is a bit more challenging, but as long as you have good movement, a ranged weapon, and a good arena, defeating it becomes really easy. To build it, I create a compact core structure with connections on every side. I then stack layers of red and white plates to form the eye itself. I do this on all 6 sides, altering the front and the back of the eye, making it all white with the eyeball, or all red for where the nerves come out. To finish it off, I attach red flame elements to the back to represent the dangling nerves. Despite being a relatively straightforward build, it captures the boss perfectly, and is one of my favourite builds. This one gets a 9 out of 10. The Eater of Worlds is a worm-like creature that lives in the corruption biome. In-game it is 70 segments long, however my LEGO version has to be a little smaller. This boss is relatively easy to defeat. By using spiky balls on platforms, each segment gets hit, allowing you to strategically defeat the boss. I start by designing a single body segment using curved elements and white studs for the eyes. I then connect multiple body segments together, allowing me to start with the tail, which uses angled pieces to create a sharp point. Finishing with the head, I use a similar technique, but then add tan tooth elements for its menacing jaw. I think the shape works really well and it looks a lot like the Eater of Worlds, but it definitely suffers from being shorter than the real one. I give this model of the Eater of Worlds a 6 out of 10. Unlike the Eater of Worlds, the brain of Cthulhu is exactly what it sounds like, a giant floating brain. Its second phase reveals a creepy heart hidden at the center, so I'm going to build it. However, just like the Eater of Worlds, using spiked balls all around you means when it gets to the second phase, the brain finds it difficult to get close to you in its mirror image phase, allowing you to easily defeat it. I start the build with the heart in the middle and use red plates around it to create the overall shape of the brain. I do this to the front and back using snot bricks, and then eventually working on the top of the brain. I ensure to add snot bricks to the sides so that I can add curved slopes in pink to create the shape of the brain. I do this on both sides before realizing I need to add the brain texture, so I chuck the pieces onto the model. The brain texture is made up of pink dots and curved tiles. Once it looks like a brain, I need to make sure it looks like a floating brain, so I add a stand to it, and then eventually add the weird brain stem attached to it. And then it's done. I'm really happy with this build. I love how the teeth look around the heart and how I managed to capture the organic look of a brain using Lego pieces. This is definitely one of the better mocks I've made. I give it a 9 out of 10. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's completely free and it helps support the channel. Plus you'll get to see part 2 where I tackle every hard mode boss in Terraria. Originally from Don't Starve, Deerclops crossed over into Terraria. Her design features a massive fur-covered body, long limbs, huge antlers, and a single eye, hence the name Deerclops. This boss might be one of the most difficult ones in the game, however I just tried to stay under it with a strong melee weapon. I find that to be the easiest way to defeat it. To build it, I start with a thick fur coat using white plates, slopes, and angled pieces to create a bulky frame. Once the fur is done, it's time to start on the limbs. I start by making the legs using bar clip elements, as well as using the same technique for the arms and attaching them all to the body. After attaching the limbs, I realized that the body's a bit flimsy, so I needed to add a stand to it so it could stand up without falling over. Once the body's all done, I start working on the head, attaching the cheeks and the top of the head, as well as the iconic eye and the antlers, and I attach the head onto the body. This is easily my best mock of the build so far, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, looking so accurate to how it looks in the game. I give this build a 10 out of 10. Next is Queen Bee, the defender of the jungle's beehives. Her design is basically just a giant bee, so she wasn't too difficult to recreate into a Lego mock. Queen Bee is also one of the easier bosses to defeat in Terraria. All you really need is some platforms so you can easily jump over her and a decent ranged weapon. I start this mock by building the body of the bee using black and yellow curved plates. Once the body is complete, I add the rest of the upper body using a hinge plate. I finally add some snot pieces for where the arms go and then start on the arms. I use clip elements to make up the arms and do so for both sides. And once the arms are attached, I start on the head using a 3x3 area attaching plates on all sides. I add the antennae using hot dog pieces so that it looks curved. Once the head is done, I add the wings to the back using clear leaf elements and then attach it to a stand so it looks like it's flying. I think this build looks really good, although it doesn't look that accurate to the Queen Bee itself. I'm really happy with how the wings turned out, so I give this build a 7 out of 10. The next boss in progression is Skeletron, the fierce guardian of the dungeon. His design is simple yet iconic, consisting of a giant skull and 2 skeletal arms. This boss can be challenging at first, but once you get used to dodging the skulls he fires and learn the rhythm of the fight, he becomes much easier to defeat. I start this build off by building the 2 side panels to the skull, and then adding them to the core structure. After those 2 are done, I start working on the back and the top of the skull, which use very similar techniques of white plates stacked on top of each other. Once I add them to the core of the skull, I can start working on the face. I make the eyes and nose using angled plates and then add the teeth. Then I finally add it to the core structure of the skull and then start working on the lower jaw. I make up the lower jaw using curved bricks. Now that the skull is completely done, I set it aside and start working on the arms. The arms are made up of curved slopes, ensuring a bone-like structure. I connect the arms using ball joints, ensuring maximum posability. Once I add the hands, the 2 arms are finally complete using the same techniques. I add all components to a clear structure, ensuring it looks like they're floating in the air. I think I've done a brilliant job creating the arms and the head of Skeletron and making them look exactly like they do in the game, and I'm really happy with the final product. Therefore, I'm giving this mock a 9 out of 10. The final boss of pre-hard mode is the infamous Wall of Flesh, a terrifying wall covered in flesh, eyes and a giant mouth that lurks deep within the underworld. This boss can be difficult to defeat, but with a long arena and good potion preparation, taking it down becomes much more manageable. I start the build off by making the panels, however they need some texture, so watch along as I add it. By using studs and dot tiles in dark red, it allows me to make the boring bright red look more like a fleshy texture, perfect for the Wall of Flesh. I obviously do this in a random pattern to ensure maximum texture. I do this exact texture for 2 of the 4 panels, however for the other 2, one is the fleshy back to it and the other is a simple place for the eyes to stay. Once all 4 panels are complete, I add it to a core structure, allowing it to create the Wall of Flesh's simple and iconic silhouette. Once all 4 panels are connected to the structure, I start working on the eyes. The eyes are a simple 3x3x3 cube with a dish element for the eyeball. I obviously do this twice, then add one to the bottom of the structure and then add one to the top of the structure. And the final thing missing from this one is obviously the mouth part. I do this by adding teeth to the 3x3x3 cube. I'm really happy that I turned the 2D version of the Wall of Flesh into a viable 3D version and it looks so similar. So I give this one a 9 out of 10. And that's every Terraria pre-hard mode boss recreated as Lego mocks. Which one was your favourite? Let me know in the comments. And make sure to subscribe so you can see part 2 where I tackle every hard mode boss. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next build. Goodbye.